Hey, how's it going? This is Mike from M&R Automotive. Today we're installing a dual 30-inch light bar setup into the Nissan Frontier Pro X. Let's pop the hood. So the first thing you have to do is remove these push pins to be able to get this plastic piece off, and you'll have room to the lower grille. You just kind of pry these up. And you could use a prying tool after this is up, prying tool, and just get these out of the way. Four. Five. Six. So next thing we're gonna do is grab the corner after we get the top off and just pry it back little by little. Get both sides. So the only thing that's held is just the bottom. Let's see what's holding the bottom together. So I see a large tab. You just gotta push on it. No? Do I just pull it a little bit? Let's see. Or at least there's a little tab on the bottom. You just gotta lift it up. If you want to get in here, I'll show you exactly how I do it. The ones in the corners are harder, so just from the bottom press up and then you'll be able to get it out like this. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the one in the corner, 7 total tabs. After you release the bottom tabs, you can just remove the grill. There's one harness. This version came with a camera. You just unclip the harness and pull the grill off. That was super simple. I want to pinpoint the clips that we're removing on the bottom. It's hard to get the camera in there. So there's flaps that go inside and they clip in. So what we're doing, we're actually going underneath the flap, pressing it up, and then you're able to remove the grill outward. So there's how many clips? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total. And then there's those 2 clips that are held the grill on top. So 7 on the bottom, and these 2, and you just pull those open. Now that we have the grill removed from the vehicle, we can go ahead and install the M&R mounts as well as the light bar into it before we put it back into the truck. So first thing we're gonna do is take out these Torx bolts on the sides. We're gonna reuse these bolts. Now that we remove the Torx bolt, we're going to slide it through the M&R bracket and reinstall it into the same position. Don't tighten it all the way. We'll do the final adjustment after we have the light bars installed. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Take it out. Thread it through the M&R bracket. And reinstall it into the original spot. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go ahead and place the light bar in between the mounts and finger tighten the side bolts. So that's one side, and we're going to do the same thing on the other end before we tighten it and align it to a spot where we want it to be. So keep in mind there's a rail system, so you can move the light bar up and down based on your liking of where you want it to sit inside the grill. So we're going to go ahead and tighten these bolts, and we're going to see the alignment for the front of the grill before we make the final tie down. Now what we're going to do, we're going to install 2 light bars onto the same mount. So now we're going to go ahead and mount one almost right on top of another. I'm going to finger tighten them. We're going to try to mount it and see how we like the alignment for the grill inserts. If anything, we'll have to loosen it up and try it again. Okay, here's 2 light bars installed. Let's see how it shines through the whole openings.
Okay, looks good.
Now that we like the positioning of the light bars, we're going to go ahead and tighten them completely. Now that we got the light bars in, time to tighten the outer bolts that hold the bracket onto the grill itself. Okay, now we're ready to install. When we're installing the light bar back on, These are the flaps that we have to kind of pry to the side when putting the grill back on, or else it'll interfere with the light bar. We're still reusing them, we're just putting them slightly outward. Now we're ready to go ahead and reinstall the grill assembly with the light bars. So we're gonna go ahead and reinsert all the clips back in. And there's still some things that you have to guide on the sides here. Oh no, that's where you have to direct that side shield a little bit outward to be able to get all the clips in. And how do we do here? On the side shield. Yeah, cleared everything. Yep, all the clips are in. We'll be using a generic wiring harness. This one comes with 2 buttons, so 1 for every switch, and 2 controls for 2 power sources. It comes with its own relays and fuses. The red is the positive of the wiring harness. It's going to go on the positive of the battery terminal. The black is the ground. You can either ground it on the chassis or the negative of the battery. It goes through the fuses, relays. These are the wires that connect to the light bars. And this is the module that you drag inside the cab, so that way you can mount it and with these 2 buttons control the 2 power sources. So here's the keypad that I've installed. It got fed through the creases here and it went under, then I went across here on top. I'm going to trace it. This is the plug where it connects to the wiring, and it's going through this hole in the garment. So I put some extra electrical tape in order for it to be secure. I zip tied it in place, and now everything is ready to be connected in the engine bay. Now that we placed the button and the rest of the wiring inside the cab, this is the rest of the wiring harness that comes into the engine bay. If you notice here, these wires for the positive and the ground terminal are fairly short. We're going to go ahead and elongate them and throw them on the other side of the vehicle where there's the battery. So I'm going to clip them, and I'm going to use a 12 gauge wire in order to extend these over there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take these out. This is what I trimmed from the supplied wiring harness. I'm going to go ahead and strip the wire. So for the ground portion of the wire, I'm going to throw an eyelet on it, crimp it, I'm going to ground it onto the chassis of the vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and try this bolt. It's a 10mm bolt. And take it out, slide this. I wanted to get it under. Maybe that's not possible. Let me see. Because you want to get it straight to the metal. Let me take off this clip to see if it'll release it. So just put something under it. Probably need a flathead screwdriver. Scissors don't work. Go ahead and take out this push pin. Get the pin out, take it out, and see if we could slide our push pin under, or our eyelet under. And hopefully this is a good grounding point. So this should be a good ground. So now we're going to do the same thing to the power cable. I'm using 12 gauge wire for this. I'm going to crimp the wire side. And we're going to extend this wire all the way to the battery. On the wiring harness side, so it's going to transfer from red to white. If you're picky about your wiring, you can also get an extension that's red. Alright, so this is the wire that we're going to be extending, and I'm going to throw an eyelid here because it's going to be on the side of the battery. Here, let me go ahead and strip this side. There's the eyelid. Okay, so this wire I'm gonna go ahead and zip tie and feed this through. I'm gonna tidy up some of this wiring so that way the harness doesn't move. So these are the relays that came with the wiring harness. So I'll make it all nice and tight, and then we'll clip the endings. Alright, so for the eyelid portion, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna feed this through? Okay, so I want to show you, kind of summarize what I've done. The ground, we're going to use this bolt. It is metal on the bottom underneath this plastic, so it should be a good ground. The white's going to be our power wire for the battery. This is our power wire for the light bars after it goes through the relays. So I took it under here, underneath the plastic, to make it nice and neat. It comes out here. This is our power wire. We're gonna go ahead and put it on the terminal, and here's our light bar wires to light bar wires themselves. Now I'm going to show you how I'm wiring two light bars onto the dual light bar wiring harness. I'm going to go ahead and shorten the wires of the light bar itself. The light bar wires, they have two wires coming out of them. I'm going to strip the outside sheathing. So each light bar has two wires, a positive and a negative. The wiring harness actually has three wires. So it has a ground, which is black, and then it has switch number 1 power and switch number 2 power. So what we're going to be doing, the ground we're going to use the same on both light bars, but the power we're going to go one yellow, one white, and one red. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So let me strip the wiring from the second light bar. Okay, I'm going to take one crimp connector. Let's do the ground first. So I'm going to fuse them. I'm going to slide the crimp connector over it, and I'm going to crimp it. I actually like to double crimp just to make sure that it gets a nice crimp on the wiring. And then I'm going to do one crimp connector for the positive for one of the light bars, which is going to be white, and one more for the other power, which is going to be amber. Okay, so just like mentioned, I'm gonna go ahead and strip a little bit more of these wires because they're fairly thin and they usually come out when you try to crimp them. So I like to fold them multiple times. So ground, here, I'll just fold it once or twice. So black to black. And I'll also double crimp it to make sure it's a nice crimp. So that's 1, 2. So these are the two power wires, the power sources. So these are going to connect to the two red wires from the light bar. So we're going to go red to red, and then we'll also go red to white. Here, so this likes to come out, so I'm going to hold it with one hand and crimp it with the other just to make sure it doesn't come out when I'm squeezing it. Tug on it to make sure it has a good crimp, and we're going to do the same thing with a white wire, which is our second power source, and that's going to give power to the second light bar. So same thing, I'm going to make sure that it crimps good. Oh, see, this is what I don't like. So let's see if we can reuse it. If not, we'll get a new crimp connector. I'm going to try to insert it, and I'm going to try to crimp it again. If not, we just wasted one, which is okay. Here, let me actually cut this off. There we go. Tug on the wires. Good, good, good. I'm gonna go ahead and use a little electrical tape on all the wires, all the crib connectors. I'm gonna go ahead and insulate this a little bit, and we're gonna go on our adventure. All this stuff can be tucked away here. I'm gonna go ahead and trim all the zip ties, tails. Okay, so the last step is to actually connect the positive terminal to the battery. I'm going to go ahead and loosen the bolt, slide the eyelid through it, and we're going to reinsert the same one back in. Okay, slide the battery terminal on. Okay, hide some of this wire here. There it is. Anything?
No.
Initially, we had a ground, the ground eyelid on this bolt. When we tried to turn on the light bars, they weren't working, so I changed the ground onto this one, and everything works fine. And this completes our installation of the dual 30 light bar setup on the Frontier Pro X. Take a look.